So thank you all for joining us here for this, what we're calling kind of an organizing plenary. We are in extraordinary times right now. If you think about it, and you've experienced this in your communities, there are people frantically taking action in all sorts of ways. A lot of folks have come to the realization after thinking that, hey, somebody's got this, somebody's got the issues of poverty, somebody's got the issues I care about, realizing that really nobody does have it, and so that they're going to have to do something about it themselves. But the thing is that they don't know what to do about it, because nowhere in our society have we been training people how to interface with our democracy. They're understanding that our decision makers and policy makers are making these decisions that are affecting people's lives in really dramatic ways, yet they don't know how to do it, to interface with them. So I kind of compared it to somebody realizing that they've got a business meeting in France tomorrow. They've got to do it in French, but they've never studied French. So that's where a lot of people are finding themselves right now, so they're frantically pushing buttons on their computers, and they're marching in the streets, and they are showing up at town hall meetings, hollering at their elected officials. And some of that stuff is effective, and some of it isn't. The good news is that all of you have extraordinary experience, and some of you are new to this. By the end of the weekend or the conference, you're going to have some tremendous experience in advocacy, and above and beyond what most people have. And so the question for a lot of us is, how do you then capture that energy? How do you help people channel their concerns and what they're doing in their communities into effective actions that they can be taking? And so we've got some amazing panelists with us here today to share some insights on that subject. So I'm going to do some introductions here, and what we're going to do is we're going to have each of them speak for a few minutes, then we're going to do some Q&A, and then we'll have them also then say a couple closing comments here. But so Michael Blake here is currently a New York Assemblyman from the 79th District, which is the Bronx area. He is also the Vice Chair of the Democratic National Committee. Mr. Blake started his politics in Michigan as the Director of External Affairs for the Michigan House. In 2008, Mr. Blake worked for Obama for America, and then joined actually the White House staff as Associate Director of Public Engagement and Deputy Associate Director for Intergovernmental Affairs. He was the National Deputy Director of Operation Vote for President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, and Mr. Blake is the founding principal of the Atlas Strategy Group. So let's hear it from Mr. Blake here. So next to Mr. Blake is Khadijah Gurnah. She is the campaign director at Moms Rising. Let's hear it for her. She has a master's degree in health management from Yale School of Public Health and over 10 years of experience in program development, advocacy, training, and community outreach. Khadijah has worked to foster better physical and mental health outcomes for underserved populations. Her work at Moms Rising focuses on supporting immigrant and faith communities as part of Moms Rising's commitment to support all America's diverse families. Previously, she worked with many partners, including the White House Office of Public Engagement and the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, on a national outreach campaign to the Muslim community for the Affordable Care Act. She received the Champion of Change Award from the White House for this work, and was featured on the White House Facebook page and blog as the change maker on health care reform. So let's hear it for Khadijah again. And then finally we have Frances Moore Lappé. She's the author of 19 books, including, wow, let's hear it from Frances. Included in that is the 3 million copy Diet for a Small Planet. And her recent work includes World Hunger, 10 Myths, co-authored with Joseph Collins. And then she's got an upcoming book, Daring Democracy, Igniting Power, Meaning, and Connection for the America We Want, co-authored with Adam Eichen, and that's coming out in September. We're really excited about that. Frances is a co-founder of Oakland-based Food First and the Cambridge-based Small Planet Institute. She is a recipient of 18 honorary degrees and has received the Right Livelihood Award, which is often called the Alternative Nobel Prize.
All right.
So we're gonna ask our panelists to say a few words here, a little bit about what. I'm bummed I missed out on that picture. We're going to have each of the speakers take a few minutes and characterize what they see as this moment and the opportunities in it. And I'm going to start with Michael Blake here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a joy and honor to be with all of you. This is a way you want to start your week. It gets your spirit right when you go back for the work that we have to do, and all we have to do. I'm honored and grateful to be able to share the stage, especially with remarkable sheroes that we have, because too often we don't have the opportunities the way we need to be making sure we recognize women in leadership. It's if we're here in DC, you have to understand that, yes, we talk about Dr. King and the I Have a Dream speech, but if it wasn't for Dorothy Irene Height, who made it a point to say that Dr. King should be the one that gives the full speech when others were trying to be there, you have to recognize the greatness that's happening there and understand that I am a man, I'm also a feminist, and be clear. And as we are here, buenos días, damas y caballeros, mi nombre es Miguel Blake, asambleísta para el Distrito 79, felicidades en grado. That's our results. Yeah. You gotta be ready. I come from the Bronx. Anybody from New York in here right now? There we go. All right. Brooklyn. We love Brooklyn too. We love Brooklyn. Okay, we're not gonna do that right now. Okay, so I am an organizer first and foremost, so I'm going to start the way an organizer does and should. I'm going to give you my contact information right now. So, because we all come to these events, but then we leave from here and we don't stay connected to be able to continue the work. So if you need to reach me, wish to reach me, my email is mb79@nyassembly.gov, mb79@nyassembly.gov. That's if you have policy questions. If you have political questions, it's mb79@dnc.org. And most importantly, my Twitter handle is, okay, we're gonna have some fun in this section, I can tell, is Mr. Mike Blake. Mr. Mike Blake. Okay. So, my daily assignment is easy. This is not work for me because my life is my work. I come to this with an understanding that when we talk about poverty, this is not some theoretical conversation for me. This is what my life has been. This is what we've gone through. See, my family's from Jamaica. My mama, for 40 years, worked at a manufacturing plant. I see we got yard folk in the room, all right, right now, right? Where we came and engaged. My mama's from Alexandria, Jamaica, where when my mama was 3, her mother passed away from a brain aneurysm, and so my mama was homeless in Jamaica. My mama slept on church pews when family didn't take her in, so she understood that journey. Mama beat breast cancer. She understands the opportunities that's here, so poverty and the conversation around it is not theoretical for me. My daddy also came from Jamaica. He came from Papine, which is outside of Kingston, and came here to the States, and for 28 years mopped hospital room floors at St. Barnabas Hospital as a proud member of 1199 SCIU. He underscored that you have to do the work. Now, I come to you from a place called the Bronx, New York, where anyone who's an educator, you've heard of a book from Jonathan Kozol, Savage Inequality, Children in American Schools. Well, let me put a face to that. I was at PS 79. I was there at that time. James Carter was my principal. 118 was my junior high school. DeWitt Clinton was my high school. DeWitt Clinton, the largest alumni association of any high school in the world, the high school of County Cullinan, James Baldwin and Congressman Charlie Rangel, Knight Tiny Archibald. The understanding of poverty is not theoretical for me. It is what I know. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I still go through it. I know what it's like to sell dinners on a Saturday afternoon to have money to pay rent. I know what it's like to be an elected official and sleep on the couch because you don't have enough money for the hotel that night. But I understand this very clearly. My block won't block my blessing. My destiny will not be denied. And my test is welcome because it's in advance of my testimony. I wish somebody was with me right now. So when we're here, we are not here for rewards. We're here for results.
Yep.
This has to be a different kind of work. This has to be a recognition that this is a life-changing assignment that you are taking on. See, poverty and the eradication of it is not going to be easy because there are a lot of folks that don't want it to change. They are comfortable with the status quo, the nonsensical, see, I can say this, I'm going to be direct about it. The nonsensical conversation of this being a health care bill, it is not a health care bill. It is a tax cut to try to help those at the top, and it's not helping people on the ground. Because at the end of the day, how can you hurt people that are trying to make ends meet every single day? If someone is trying to decide between groceries and their prescription drugs, we should not be making it harder for them. We should be making it easier for you. So when I think about organizing, then I think about how we take what's happening in the country right now and turn it into a positive. It's the realization that, yes, as a Democrat, and I can say this individually, I wanted Secretary Clinton to win, but I also recognize that because of what happened last year, a resistance has emerged.
Yeah.
That there are things that might not have been occurring otherwise. I don't know if you've realized this, but by the time you've been here celebrating the conference, we also recognize it's been 6 months since the Women's March, which when you think about the power of the Women's March was so successful not because it was just one day. It was millions of allies all across the world saying, what are we going to consistently do, not just today, but have 10 steps of action for 100 days to continue to mobilize and what has to be there. It was an understanding that we have to think about it in the way that President Clinton used to say back in years past, where he said, if you have shared values and shared responsibilities, it leads to shared benefits. So it's that recognition that if we want to address poverty, you got to meet people where they're at. You got to understand that every person is someone's child. And you have to think about policies and politics in that way. So if I can, let me give some very brief tactics and then we'll keep on going and move from here. So our vision in the Bronx, I represent 126,000 people. I have the most diverse legislative district in the country, according to the census. I have the largest West African population outside of West Africa in the world is actually in our district. Our district is 53% Latino, but simultaneously, 39% of my constituents, 25 and older, don't have a high school diploma. Simultaneously, 108 schools in a 31 block radius. We're owed the most money of any district in New York City. Simultaneously, 2 of the 3 predecessors of mine went to jail for financial corruption.
Wow.
You start from a space where people are trying to figure out what do you do. So we have a vision and we call it 3-2-1. 3 are for the 3 E's. Economic development, education, and equity. The 2 paths to achieve the 3 E's. Stronger minority and women-owned businesses so that we can have economic opportunities in our communities, while also having a career-oriented education so that a kid can go from the cradle to the career. Because what's the point of someone graduating from school and they can't get a job, right? And then the one focus is how do we make the South Bronx the urban metropolis of the world? Because I want people to think with a higher height. I want to think about how the first time I met then Senator Obama, he said, Michael, dream big dreams. Too often we're saying to people in our communities to dream small dreams. No, I want you to dream big dreams. I want you to realize them and dream even further. But when you're experiencing poverty, it can be hard to think about that because you're just trying to make it through the day.
Yeah.
So we decided to attack it in a very concrete and real way. So for economic development, we assess it from a policy perspective, as well as how do we utilize the bully pulpit to help people at the same time. From policy, we were able to change the law in New York State so that now if you are a minority or a women or small business below 300 employees that contracts with New York State below 300 employees, you get paid in 15 days instead of 30 days. What does that then mean? That means you then get to pay your employees faster. That means your employees are not waiting for a paycheck to come to them because you've been waiting for someone else to help you. What does that mean? That means that there are so many families that we know in our communities that they are one paycheck away from poverty. They are one paycheck away from being kicked out of a home. They're one paycheck away from trying to figure out how to make ends meet. But it's that understanding that we have to utilize it in that way. Therefore, we then took the bully pulpit and engaged with the American Entrepreneurship Award. We're now the second place in the country, Miami being the first, for a 10-year, $500,000 commitment for entrepreneurs on the ground. What is it doing right now? It's saying to women entrepreneurs of faith, entrepreneurs of all different perspectives, we believe in you and we're going to do what we need to do for access to capital and access to contracting. Why? So that you will then hire people in our communities, so that you will have targeted and tactical approaches. You will not come into our communities and not have a focus on local hiring. You will not come into our communities and not think about how do you have clear goals that will be actualized. And if you come in and you try to do these things, you are not welcome here. It is an understanding that we need you to help us in a very concrete and real way. Education. We focused on policy as it relates to the My Brother's Keeper initiative, to be very focused on what we're doing to changing the narrative. First state in the country in New York, $20 million commitment last year, $18 million this year, where you have to demonstrate that you will hit at least 2 of 6 benchmarks to change the narrative within your schools. Why? Because a kid may be intentionally causing trouble because that meal might be the only meal they eat that day. It might be the understanding that they're not a bad kid. They just seen different perspectives and you just got to help them along the way. While simultaneously, how do we give our teachers and our educators professional development and support that they need, while also recognizing that we have to stop attacking mental health as if there's some sort of stigma. Yeah. Be engaged and have the conversations and welcome people in this way. Too often we're not doing it in a tactical manner, while taking it to the next step of utilizing that bully pulpit of saying, I want to talk to that young kid because that young brother or young sister that's standing out on the corner, they're a genius. You know why? Because if they're off by a decimal point, they're dead. And so I just have to give them access to the opportunity and show them what the possibility can be and make sure that we're creating those spaces for them, which leads me to equity. I'm very clear about this. You attack any community, you attack all of our communities. You attack the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the atheist community, agnostic community, the Christian community, you attack all of us. You attack women, you attack us. You attack millennials, you attack us. You attack seniors, you attack us. No matter who you may be, we all have to go in this together, because if you haven't figured this out by now, yes, I'm a preacher. There's a scripture that brings you to a space that if you take the time to look at it, when it talks about Mary and Joseph, many times people will say, well, it talked about how there wasn't room at all. No, it actually said there was no room for them. Now, right now, there's a society that we live in where for them can vary in what that for them may be, but people believe we're not fighting for them. And so equity has to be thinking about it and changing it in that aspect, in that creative way. So tactically, here's what you have to do. Number one, think about it in this way. Determine your end goals and then work backwards. Too often when we're doing our organizing exercises, we're starting from the front end, but we're not actually gaming out where do we want to see success at the end of the day. Again, we are not here for rewards, we're here for results. Number two, you have to think about and understand there's a clear difference in our organizing between goals and objectives. Goals are the visionary, the aspirational component we're trying to get to. The objectives is how we actually see the measurable, demonstrable change in our respective communities. How do I get more people, more jobs, more economic opportunities, better health conditions, make sure the hospitals actually have social responsibility as well at the same time, making sure all these pieces are intertwined at the same time. Number three, understanding that usually it takes people 7 times before they will remember your name. That's the reason why you get so much mail at your homes, because you usually, all marketing advice demonstrates, if you see something 7 times, that's when you will start to remember what's happening there. Number 4, understand at the end of the day, you have to drive people in a very tactical, powerful way. And what we always say is find your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you having these conversations? Why should someone care about addressing poverty in these ways? John Hope Bryant, who's a part of Operation Hope, says this all the time. We are no longer in a civil rights generation. We're in a civil rights generation where you cannot just make the social case for diversity and reform. You have to make the economic case for the reform. Because when you do it in that way, you can move needles in different ways that otherwise may not be happening, which take me to the last few points that are here. Now, when we think about what we're trying to do in addressing poverty, yes, we are in an environment where people are upset. I respect that. Yes, people may be frustrated. I recognize that. But understand this. There's a fire and energy that's happening in the country right now that may not have happened before, that we may not have understood. And you think about what happened during the civil rights movement. When King was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson assembled his cabinet and all those that were with him. And he said, what did you expect to happen when the riots and protests occurred, when you've been keeping your foot on their necks and their backs for 300 years? It's an understanding that it's not supposed to be easy. It took 9 years to go from Brown versus Board to the Civil Rights Act. It's an understanding that you have to go through the journey to get there. And this is how you mobilize and build in this way. So in my role in the State Assembly and in my role in the DNC, we are focused on showing people the last point. Be the face of hope for somebody. You can show someone that it could be possible by overcoming the odds. When I go into my community, I tell the young people all the time, I know what it's like because I was there. I know what it's like because I've experienced it. And I'm helping to change these policies so that I can help you. I bring you to this anecdote. Last year, we were celebrating a holiday season. We were giving out gifts to young people in the community. People were coming, they were excited. We had hot chocolate we were able to give out. Received a text message at the end of that. And it was a text message that has impacted me more than any text message I received since I've been in office. It was from a young organizer named Clyde Thompson, who said a mom had just sent him this text. Said, tell Mr. Blake thank you, because this is the first time as a mother of 3 I've been able to give gifts to my kids for the holidays. It's that understanding that it's not just about me giving them a gift, it's about giving them hope and giving them opportunity and changing the game in that way. And so I say thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this movement. But make sure that when we leave from here, be tactical, be organized, be mobilized, and remind someone we are not here for rewards. We are here for results. Thank you.
I don't know how I follow up from that. So my name is Khadijah, and I'm a campaign director at Moms Rising. Now I have some... Thank you! I have a lot of serious facts and figures and organizing information, but before I start on that, I just want to tell you that I just came back. This time in organizing I've been organizing since I was 12, and this time in organizing has been some of the hardest times of my life. It's been very difficult because every day you wake up and there's something new. And so I took a vacation. I was away. I was born in Kenya. I was in Kenya for 3 weeks. And coming back I was waiting, what am I coming back to? And this is what I came back to, and I want to thank you for that. It has been amazing to come back to this. I was telling Christy over there that I had 2 choices of outfits. I just got off a plane last Friday, so I quickly packed my bag, and I had 2 choices of outfits. The other pair was black pants, very formal clothes, but you look gorgeous. This is how you make me feel right now. I just felt so good. You guys made me feel so good. This has been incredible to come back to this, and I truly appreciate it. So I want to talk about Moms Rising. Moms Rising is an organization of over 1 million members and 5 million readers. So what we do is we use modern engagement tools to increase family economic security, decrease discrimination, and most importantly, we are building a grassroots movement. Why it's so important. Being a mom is now a greater prediction of wage and hiring discrimination than being a woman. So this is the gap. This is what the motherhood wage gap looks like. Women without children earn 90 cents on a dollar for a man, what a man earns. Mothers make 73 cents on a dollar. Black mothers make 51 cents, and Latino mothers make 46 cents. Yes. So given that over 80% of American women are going to be mothers by the time they're 44, this is an incredible wage gap that has a lot to explain about and explains why so many women and children are living in poverty. So times have changed. More moms are in the labor force than previous generations, but our public policies haven't caught up. But there is hope. There's tremendous power in bringing voices of mothers together. So studies have shown that things like having policies like paid family leave, medical leave, health care, early learning, and child care access helps lower the wage gaps between mothers and non-mothers. Passing these policies also raises all boats by providing needed economic security for everyone. But how do we get there? How do we organize? How do we do this? Because there's two main barriers for people getting involved and being engaged in advocacy. The first thing is that people are busier than ever. Many people, especially if we're here talking poverty, how many people have to work 2-3 jobs in addition to raising a family? So you're asking people to advocate on the fringes of all that work that they're doing. The second thing is there's so much information right now. There is so much information. People receive around 3,000 media and marketing hits per day. Think about that. So you have to cut through that clutter. So what do we do at Moms Rising to connect with parents, to cut through that clutter and help people have ownership of this policy engagement? We have something called layer cake organizing, and what that means is that we encourage people to engage on many different levels. So the first layer we have is synergistic collaboration work. That's a lot of big words to say. We work with other people. So we collaborate with over 200 aligned organizations. The other thing we do is one-click advocacy. So we have it's called Action Kit, and what it does is, I see people nodding. You've gotten my emails. So what happens is that we send out emails where people can engage with one click. That one click can send a letter to the editor. That one click can send a letter to a legislator. And we also have phone calls that we send out automatically that by clicking, you can get straight through to your local representative. The other thing we have that we've seen a lot of here, which is empowering people to know how to engage with the legislators, because we said, and I've heard so many people here saying, they work for us. They work for us, but the only way that they're going to work for us is if we know how to engage them and how to connect with them. So a big part of what we do is we have on-the-ground deliveries. So when we get together signatures, we arrange deliveries to legislators, and so that with petitions and so on. So part of that on-the-ground deliveries is training people, training volunteers, letting them know how they can engage, how they can connect with the legislators. And another layer to all of this, and Michael is so awesome at this, is the social media. So there's a combination of social media, which is the less traditional, but also the local media. So if you're doing something beyond just that single visit, if you can get that visit in the media, in social media, you're amplifying your voices. So that's a very important part of what we do, traditional media and social media. So with all these things, I know it seems fairly straightforward, but we've been able to engage over 1 million members across the country, mostly moms, and it has been so powerful. I'm going to go over just some of the wins to show you how powerful it truly has been. We have taken over 1 million actions, moving forward policies to have access to affordable and high-quality childcare at the state and national levels. For those of you in DC, you'll see that we've done some amazing, my colleagues have done some amazing things here around paid family leave. We've worked on kicking soda off the kids menu. Some of America's biggest companies have proudly adopted paid family leave for their employees. And just recently, Washington adopted the most comprehensive paid family leave law in the country. We've had, as has results, had members push back the repeal of the ACA. So moms have done some incredible things. And what I want to, so this is, these are the facts. This is what we do and why we do it. And I want to talk, thank you. I want to talk a little bit more about why I do it. And the reason that I do it is that Moms Rising is a very important community to me, as I can see this community is here, in that we are a very diverse nation, but we're having trouble coming to terms with what that looks like and how we work together as a nation. And so Moms Rising to me has been very important because it's created this space where we have this commonality, that we are moms, and we have this understanding that we're working together for policies that matter to us all. Now, the reason that this is so important to me, that we were working together on issues, I know some of the issues that we work on tend to lean towards more to one party than the other, but things like early childhood, things like paid family leave, those are very bipartisan issues. And it's been very powerful to work on issues that go across the political spectrum, especially at a time like this. As I mentioned, that I'm from Kenya. I was born in Kenya, and what that means is that I've grown up most of my life knowing refugees and knowing what it looks like when a state collapses, because all around us we've had conflict. And when I hear a lot of the partisan conversations, it sounds to me a lot like the tribal tension which has caused these countries to collapse. And so I am an advocate, but first of all, I'm a mom. And this is where my children are born. This is where my husband was born. This is where I'm committed. I'm a citizen of here, and I don't want our country to descend into tribal tension. And so a large part of what I do is working to make sure that our voices are nonpartisan and that we make connections, and we continue to make connections. Now, I'm inspired by my son. My children are my inspiration. To understand, my son, he's now 13, but we live in a very small town in we lived in a small town called Middletown in Connecticut. Very small town, not very diverse. My son went to a very non-diverse school. So raising him as a Muslim, he didn't really understand what people thought of Muslims. When there was a time where there was a lot of rhetoric in the news, and I had to explain to him what people thought of Muslims, because he didn't know. He just didn't know that people had negative conceptions as Muslims, because he really didn't see himself as any different from any other one of his classmates. So what my son decided to do with this information was run for student government.
Whoa!
I was so nervous. I thought that the whole election would look like Facebook comment pages, that people would say mean things to my baby. But I had to let him be, so he ran, and he put together a speech. And his speech was, I'm black, you're not, that's okay. I'm Puerto Rican, you're not, that's okay. I'm Muslim, you're not, that's okay. It's a chance for us to get to know one another.
Oh.
And he won. So my son is teaching me a lot. That it is difficult political times, but if my son can stand up and reach across many different cultural and religious divisions, I think we can too, and I hope we do.
going to try it. I'm going to try this and see if it works. I kind of like to move around. I am so profoundly moved by your words and who you are. Thank you so much. And I know I'm speaking for all of us. Whoa. So, okay. Pretend it's 1969. And I'm dug in the UC Berkeley Ag Library, and I'm asking a question. Why is there hunger in the world? And the experts, they know. It's because there's scarcity of food. And I want to know. I sit in the Ag Library, and I am shocked. I discover that we humans are actively creating scarcity out of plenty. So that was my first question. And my questions kept growing and growing and growing and growing until at some point I got to this. How can it be that we are creating a world together that not one of us as individuals would really choose? What's up with us? And so finally, I got it. Because we humans are creatures of the mind, that we see the world through frames, or actually filters, that determine what we can see and what we cannot see, what we think life is all about and we're all about. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, except that in this extraordinary moment in which we are alive on this planet, my thesis is that we are trapped in some deadly frames, some deadly ideas. Let me just clarify. First, what is the core frame defining reality? We are still stuck in the scarcity frame. The idea there's not enough of anything. There's not enough food, there's not enough energy, you name it. In fact, of course, modern economics, what is it? It's the allocation of scarce resources. That's the definition of it. Wait, and human nature. If we peel away the fluff, what is the message we get about human nature? That we are fundamentally selfish, materialistic, and competitive. And so you put those things together, and then what is our frame about the nature of existence itself? That we are in a competitive struggle over lack, bringing forth, of course, great fear and othering and feeling of desperation that brings about the experience of scarcity, no matter how much we're producing. So, now, another consequence of this foundational frame, and I'll be blunt here. Democracy becomes impossible. Now, from this understanding of life, how could humans possibly come together, deliberate, and make fair choices that are promised in the very first line of our Constitution to promote the general welfare, remember? How can we do that if we hold this frame? So my thesis is that all of our work, that our work together starts with addressing this fundamental level of distrust. This fundamental distrust of our own capacities and nature's capacities. It's a premise that leads us to a failure to meet not only our minimal human needs, but the planetary life itself. So our planet's, our panel's label is the wake-up call. And I think that we have the wake-up call of all wake-up calls. Hey, humans, Earth is calling out to us, crying out to us. It's time for some deep rethinking. And so to make possible the essential ingredient for our flourishing, and I'm going to argue this is real living democracy, we have to understand democracy is essential not just to meet our body's needs, but to meet our spirit's needs. And I mean that democracy is the only pathway in which humans gain a voice essential to us, a sense of power, a sense that we count, we have agency. Second, that we have meaning and purpose in our lives beyond just our own survival. And third, that we feel connected with each other and the earth. These are the essentials of life beyond just the physical. And so they add up to me to human dignity itself. So let's start with a rethink then to make such democracy possible. First, on the scarcity idea, it's wrong. That we are not lacking. We can take a deep breath. I know most about the food picture, and let me tell you that we can align with nature, and there is plenty for us all, not only now, but into the future. And take energy. Do you realize that every day the Earth received 15,000 times the bolt of energy that we need to meet all of our energy needs? So there's no lacking here. So we can rethink and align with nature's regenerative power and this fear of scarcity that fuels the othering and violence that it can recede. And rethinking human nature, here's the evidence. It's pretty clear, at least to me. I'll put this out there for you. Try this on. From slavery to the slaughter of native peoples and to the Holocaust, we do know that not just a few psychopaths, but most of us are capable of incredible cruelty. And we also know that humans come wired for deep empathy, that actually they've discovered these neurons in our brains, that when we're observing another, they actually fire as if we're having that experience. And we come equipped with great capacity for cooperation. In fact, when the MRI scanners look at us when we're cooperating, they tell us our brains light up like we're eating chocolate. It's so pleasurable. And fairness, it's not just us, but other primates too, deep need for fairness. Adam Smith, who was supposedly the godfather of greed, he argued that we are some, quote, in peculiar manner, tied, bound, and obliged to the observation of justice. So, can both be true? Can we have this almost universal capacity for unspeakable harm and brutality and be wired and have these deeply, deeply strong social sensibilities? Yes, we are both. And the moment that we believe that we are both is the moment that we get busy thinking, okay, under what conditions does the best of us come out and the worst of us is kept in check? What are the conditions that bring out the best and the worst? And I'm just going to offer what I think history has shown us. I'm making some big claims this morning, that there are three conditions that are proven throughout history to bring out the worst. They are the concentration of power, they are lack of transparency, in other words, secrecy, and they are cultures of blame. Oh, it's not me, it's you, it's not me. Those three ingredients do us in. Now, the positives, they are the opposite. They are the widely dispersed and fluid power that is constantly growing, right, as we step up. Transparency is the second, and cultures of mutual accountability, so we're all on the hook. Those are the three positives. Now, what do they add up to? Well, they pretty well describe the essence of democracy to me. And so, I get it now. Democracy is not a choice. Democracy is not a choice. So we can scrap this snarky Churchill line about democracy is the worst system except for all the others. Democracy is not a choice. It is essential. It is the only form of governance where we set the rules to bring out the best in our humanity. And so by that then, we can do what we need to do. So of course I know that democracy has become a joke to some, and to others it's just a dull duty. You know, it's sort of the spinach we have to eat to get our yummy desserts of personal freedom. But no, and I've never been with people who I've exactly said it to this before, but I am brave today. Braver, let me put it that way. I believe that to save ourselves and our wondrous earth, we can actually fall in love with democracy. We will willingly, joyfully leap out of our comfort zones on behalf of that love. Now, it's daunting. I know, it's daunting. But don't forget, humans evolved as doers, right? As doers, as problem solvers. And I know that it's not the magnitude of a challenge that crushes the human spirit. The only thing that crushes the human spirit is feeling useless, right? If we can feel useful, if there's even a possibility, not a certainty, but a possibility that we can do it, and if there is a place for us, and you guys have got that down, if there's those three things, we're golden. Humans have shown ourselves to be unstoppable under those conditions. So what I'm so excited about at being 73, and I'm just getting started! is that I see you, wonderful people, a part of what I'm coming to call a global democracy movement. And I see it embodied here in my folks that I'm working with in three manifestations or three expressions. One are movements that are actually embodying the essence of these conditions of living democracy. I think of BRAC, we heard about this morning, for example, or my friend Jeffrey Ash, who is the guru of what is called the savings groups, which you all know about. And he's been filling my ears with these wonderful stories of women's simple savings and lending groups where, because there's not an outside lender, the interest returns to them. And there are now 14 million women in these savings groups. They want to go to 50 million in the next few years. So these are the embodiments, if you will, at a community level of living democracy. And then there are those of you who are mastering what I call mastering the arts of citizen advocacy to enact life-serving policies in our governance. And for me, of course, results is the model of that category. And the third are initiatives that are working to create new rules. For example, money out of politics, citizens' voices in, new rules. So on that score, what just gets me up in the morning is the realization, first time in my life, and I love being 73 because when I say my life, it means something, right? First time in my life, a movement of movements is forming on these democracy questions, these core questions. People from the Sierra Club, NAACP, from labor coming together and realizing, wait, we can't solve any of our issue passions without democracy. Let's get together on that and be at each other's backs when we need to be together on that. And it's happening. The Democracy Initiative just started a few years ago, 4 years ago. Now 60 groups representing all these different fields and 30 million Americans now coming together, not abandoning their issue passions, but adding this core question of changing the democracy rules themselves. And so this movement of movements is actually making changes in cities, in counties, in some states where money out of politics, public financing is beginning to work, and voter protection is being ensured. It's really starting. And certainly I see Moms Rising as just a critical piece of that movement of movements. And bottom line is that this movement of movement actually embodies the three conditions of the dispersion of power, transparency, and the mutual accountability that we define, that I'm defining this today as the definition of democracy itself. So for me, the awakening and the excitement that I feel it more than ever in my life is in part because of something that happened to me just over a year ago. As part of Democracy Spring, I marched from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., and I met many people, made friends, but there was one young man in particular, Adam Eichen, 24 years old, and we talked and talked and talked, and now we've just completed a book together, Daring Democracy, and a lot of our talking was, what's happening to us? How are we being changed by this? What we're doing, walking, I didn't think I could walk 10 miles, much less 110. And so we named it, and this is how we named this essence of this emotional shift that is this falling in love process. And and this is, I think, who you are. One we call civil courage. It's that feeling that happens when you do that which you that you thought you could not do, and then your brain says, oh, if I did that, one more thing. It's that civil courage we know that comes to us when we work together. Second is that power of bonding with strangers. You know, loneliness is a tragic plague of the society. And yet when we work together, as I'm sure you realize too, and as I marched, wait, I would never have met these people otherwise. They're so different from me. Oh, but they care just as much as I do about this purpose. And so that sense of loneliness or separation, isolation, dissolves and as we bond in this common purpose, bonding with strangers. And the third is captured in a story, and this I know you feel. For me, it happened as we were marching into Washington. We were chanting, whose democracy? Our democracy. Whose democracy? Our democracy. And in that moment, the Capitol dome came into focus. And I started bawling. And I said, oh yeah, my democracy. It's not those people in those buildings, it's mine. And I had that sense of, oh, we've got the solutions. Of course it's ours. You know, the grown-ups in the room have arrived. And so these are the 3 internal shifts that have changed my life, and Adam and I call them the thrill of democracy. So let me just tell you that I see all of these qualities in you. I am therefore profoundly honored to be here. And I want to leave us with this thought, that this extraordinary time that we share together, I've come to see that the opposite of evil is no longer goodness. The opposite of evil is courage. And courage to rethink and to step out beyond our comfort zones, as I know you all are doing, beyond our comfort zones, and until our hearts are going pound, 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 pound. And then we say, oh yeah, that's just my inner applause saying, I am great, I'm doing what I should be doing. So as you step out of your comfort zones, I want you to remember that. So, goodness without courage is no longer good enough. And fortunately, I feel that your courage is incredibly contagious. Thank you, thank you.
Powerful. Powerful.